protest by several unions in Panama against the high cost of living continues. In response, the national government announced a freeze on the price of fuel and some products of the basic food basket. The president of Mexico, Andrés Manuel Lopez Obrador, met this Tuesday with his U.S. counterpart Joe Biden, where they will discuss migration, security, and economy as central issues. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez holds his first State of the Nation debate amid the impact of the crisis caused by the high cost of fuel. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with news. A new day of protest engages various unions in Panama against the high cost of living. In response, the national government announced a freeze on the price of fuel and some basic goods. The Single Union of Construction Workers, Sontrax, stated this Monday night that the national strike continues after rejecting the announcement of President Cortizo on the freezing of the price of fuel and of 10 products of the basic basket. Saul Mendes, Secretary General of Sontrax, considered the government proposal insufficient and assured that the pressure measures will continue. A march and a 24-hour strike were also announced for this Tuesday throughout the country if there are no convincing answers to demands put forward by the social movements and trade unions. The governments of Nicaragua and China on Monday promoted actions to implement the Early Harvest Agreement, which would mean boosting the economy of the Central American country. As part of the mechanisms initiated and which strengthened relations between the two nations, the Early Harvest Agreement was signed, whose objective is to exchange export and import goods with preferential tariffs. By means of this agreement, Nicaragua could exceed $1 billion in exports in the next 2 or 3 years. Authorities from both countries also signed a memorandum of understanding for the establishment of a joint commission for economic, trade, and investment cooperation. The Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America People's Trade Agreement, ALBA-TCP, will discuss this Tuesday issues related to the younger population. During a high-level meeting of the organization, it is expected that the youth movements of member countries will be encouraged and coordinated to play a leading role in this sense. The Executive Secretary of the Alliance, Sasha Llorenti, indicated that representatives will share experiences in public policies and will coordinate joint tasks in this area of action. ALBA-TCP is made up of Venezuela, Cuba, Bolivia, Nicaragua, Dominica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia and Grenada, and was created in 2004 under the initiative of the revolutionary leaders Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro. In Brazil, former President Lula da Silva will fulfill a series of political alliances and commitments ahead of the October 2nd presidential elections. Lula's new visit to Brasilia will be a very important moment to accelerate the organization of the electoral pre-campaign. Before the event scheduled for 5 p.m. local time, the pre-candidate will talk with leaders and businessmen of the trade of goods, services, and tourism about the sector's demand. The event will be attended by the pre-candidate to the DF government, Leandro Graz, who represents the Federation of the PT and the Green and Communist Parties of Brazil in the suffrage, Rosilene Correa, pre-candidate to the Senate for the same coalition, and other pre-candidates and leaders of the center left in the DF will also attend the meeting. In Haiti, more than 52 people have died in clashes between armed gangs in the capital Port-au-Prince. The clashes began last Friday, forcing thousands of residents to confine themselves to their homes without access to water, food, or basic services. This is the second gang war in the northern part of the capital since the end of April, when clashes left at least 200 dead, hundreds injured, and more than 30,000 internally displaced. According to authorities, many of the fatalities belong to the warring gangs. However, there are also several deaths among the civilian population. And in protest at the widespread violence in Port-au-Prince, a popular local radio station announced on Monday that it would stop broadcasting for a week. The announcement concerns Caraïbe radio and television, which has been on the air since 1949, and this is the second time they are silent. The first protest was in November 2020 as a demonstration of protest against the kidnapping and murder of a young girl. Michelle Joseph, journalist and news director of Radio Television Caraïbe, pointed out that in addition to affecting the population, gun violence targets communicators.
We journalists at Radio Television Caraïbe are not immune. Members of this organization have been kidnapped, including the station director, and colleagues have been kidnapped. We are the target of bandits. Every day, all day, we get calls at the microphone of Radio Caraïbes from crime families that have had members kidnapped or killed.
Mexican President Andrés Manuel Lopez Obrador will meet this Tuesday in Washington with his U.S. counterpart Joe Biden to discuss migration and bilateral cooperation issues. President Lopez Obrador continues to insist on the need to tackle the causes of migration after the death of dozens of undocumented migrants inside an abandoned trailer in Texan territory. The Mexican executive explained that among the different topics of the bilateral relationship, binational security will be addressed. Finally, the Mexican head of state pointed out that there is a relationship of respect between countries. The intention is to reach agreements that will benefit both peoples on the basis of sovereignty. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Authorities in the city of Novaya Kakhovka confirmed 7 dead and over 40 wounded after Zelensky's army shelled them with U.S. weapons on Monday night. Vladimir Leontiev, head of the city located in the Kherson Oblast, confirmed the death of 7 people, 40 wounded, and a large number of residents still under the rubble. He first reported that the attacks targeted a hospital, a market, residential buildings, and natural fertilizer and saltpeter warehouses. A warehouse containing humanitarian aid was also severely damaged. The bombardment was reportedly carried out with U.S.-made HIMARS-type multiple rocket launchers. Britain's main opposition, Labour Party, will present a motion of censure on Tuesday with the intention of holding the vote to try to remove Prime Minister Boris Johnson from government. Although Johnson resigned on Thursday, he continues as head of government on a temporary basis while the Conservative Party appoints a new leader due to be announced on September 5th. The Labour's motion would force Johnson's party colleagues to either support the executive or vote against it. If the vote is successful, the door would open to a new general election, or Queen Elizabeth II could invite someone else to form a government.
Importance of institutions and conventions. Today, it is about...
In this context, this Tuesday officially begins the campaign to choose from the cabinet the next prime minister. So far, there are 11 candidates to replace Boris Johnson, but they will need the support of at least 20 deputies of the House of Commons to enter the race. The list of candidates will be announced this Tuesday, and the first closed-door vote will be held on Wednesday. To move on to the next round, the candidates must obtain at least 30 votes. The voting will continue until only 2 candidates are left, who will be submitted to the scrutiny of the members of the majority party. The winner will be announced on September 5th when Parliament resumes sessions after the summer recess. Sanchez undergoes his first debate on the state of the nation as Prime Minister, a parliamentary event that had not been held since 2015. The leader of the executive is expected to announce new measures to deal with the impact of the crisis arising from the war in Ukraine. He will do so under the watchful eye of the leader of the opposition, Alberto Núñez Feijóo, who will not be able to speak as he does not have a seat. The debate, which begins this Tuesday and will conclude on Thursday with the vote on the motions for resolutions, comes before the meeting scheduled between Pedro Sánchez and Yolanda Díaz to sign the peace agreement between the coalition partners PSOE and Unidas Podemos, following disagreements over the increase in military spending. EU finance ministers on Tuesday gave Croatia the final green light to adopt the euro single currency after January 1st, 2023. The newest member joins the group at a difficult moment, with the euro hovering close to parity with the US dollar, a symptom of a looming cost of living crisis in the eurozone economy. Croatia expressed willingness to adopt the single currency upon joining the EU in 2013, and the decision to allow Zagreb's entry comes as the euro has just celebrated its 20th anniversary. This move also means a seat at the EU's top decision-making tables.
3 remaining legal documents granting the membership.
In Japan, hundreds of citizens paid posthumous tribute to former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The funeral began on Tuesday at the Sojoji Buddhist Temple in Tokyo, a private ceremony only for relatives, but many members of the public gathered to pay their respects as well. Visitors were allowed to go to an area of the temple where they left with and in front of a photographic portrait of Abe. The former Japanese Prime Minister was killed last Friday in an attack at an election rally ahead of Sunday's parliamentary elections. In the incident, he was shot in the back by a man with a homemade gun who was arrested moments later. In California, a large fire that has been burning since July 7th in Yosemite National Park and threatening more than 500 of its iconic giant sequoias has been 25% contained by firefighters on Monday, according to the United States National Park Service. The fire, dubbed Washburn, has already devastated 1,100 hectares in the southern part of the park. The fire doubled in size over the weekend around the Butterfly Forest, where some of the trees up to 2,000 years old reach heights of almost 80 meters. Although fire is part of the natural process in the forest and helps the redwoods to survive by helping the seeds to come out of the cones and regenerate the cell and wildlife habitat, a large fire like the current one can cause significant damage.
We did some burning in the Grove in 2017, so things are looking pretty good in here, and we just hope to continue that way. Everyone is spread out throughout this entire part of the park, and really just putting priority on protecting the community of Wawona.
At least 150 people were killed and more than 160 injured in Pakistan due to torrential rains and floods in the country. Authorities are keeping the southern province of Sindh on alert, with rainfall affecting much of the region, especially the city of Karachi. 26 deaths have been reported in this province since 14 June, according to a report by the Provincial Disaster Management Authority, bringing the total number of deaths nationwide to 150 in the last month and the total number of injured to 163. Emergency measures have been imposed in regions located near water banks, dams, rivers, and other water bodies for a month to prevent further incidents. Pakistan's Meteorological Department warned of vigorous monsoon activity during the week, with the storm currents advancing towards the north and center of the country. More news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In Nigeria, at least 18 people were reported killed in a new attack by criminal gangs in the Zamfara region. Local media reported that the attack was perpetrated by local militias against citizens of the village of Dangulbi and Congo in the northern Maru area of the country. Local authorities detailed that during the attack, 13 of the victims were killed in Dangulbi and 5 others died in Congo. The attack occurred in the context of the deterioration of security in Abuja in recent months due to the criminal armament threat that is advancing towards the south of the African continent. A number of 49 soldiers from the Ivory Coast were arrested in Mali on Monday after arriving at the airport. According to the spokesman of the de facto government of Mali, Abdoulaye Maiga, those arrested were carrying arms, ammunition, and equipment.
Ivory Coast, 49 Ivorian soldiers with their weapons and ammunition, as well as other military equipment, landed at the international airport of President Modibo Keita Seno. Thanks to the professionalism of the Malian Defense and Security Forces, it was established that the 49 Ivorian soldiers were illegally on the national territory of Mali. As a result, they were immediately arrested and their weapons, ammunition, and equipment were seized.
The transitional government of Mali considered the detainees as mercenaries, even though the United Nations claimed that the soldiers were hired to work for a contractor of the mission in the country.
In view of all these failures and infractions committed in the context of the deployment of these 49 Ivorian soldiers, the transitional government considers them to be mercenaries, as defined by the OAU Convention on the Elimination of Mercenarism in Africa. The intent of those arrested was clearly to break the dynamic of rebuilding and securing Mali, as well as the return of the constitutional order.
Malaysia's King Abdullah Ahmad Shah met with visiting Chinese State Council and Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Kuala Lumpur, with both agreeing to expedite practical cooperation and advance the key Belt and Road projects. Abdullah said China is not only Malaysia's largest trading partner, but also its important strategic partner. For his part, Wang said China has been the largest trade partner of Malaysia for 13 consecutive years, and the all-around cooperation between the two countries has been fruitful, boosting both countries' development and delivering huge benefits to the two peoples. He added that China stands ready to collaborate with Malaysia to adhere to open regionalism, safeguard the hard-won peace, stability, and development in the region, and make greater contributions to the development and advancement of humankind. And the Pacific Islands Summit takes place in Fiji on Tuesday. China's growing influence and the impact of climate crisis mark the debates on the summit. The summit is of particular international interest following the signing in April of a security pact between China and the Solomon Islands, as well as Beijing's attempt to seal a similar joint agreement with 10 nations in the zone. The meeting is attended by the leaders of Australia and New Zealand, the two Pacific powers whose dominance in the region, which has been based on U.S. support, is under threat. For its part, the Solomon Islands assured that the pact with Beijing is a way of diversifying alliances in order to maintain its national security, especially in the face of the problems derived from the climate crisis.
The Pacific Islands Forum choose to navigate these challenges and opportunities as we voyage into the future. Will we forge ahead together? Will we take individual paths? Will we be assertive, or will we leave it to others to decide our fate?
For his part, the Secretary General of the Forum, Henry Puna, pointed to climate change and the dynamic geopolitical landscape as the main challenges facing the region in both the short and long term.
Our region continues to face enduring and endemic challenges and vulnerabilities that have in many instances been significantly exacerbated by climate change and COVID-19. Further to that, remains in a precarious position, both in the short and in the long term.
Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, Director General of the World Health Organization, warned that COVID-19 is far from being over as new waves appear in different countries, and has also warned to be on high alert at all times.
The waves of the virus demonstrate again that the COVID-19 is nowhere near over. As the virus pushes at us, we must push back. We're in a much better position than at the beginning of the pandemic. Of course, we have made good progress. We have safe and effective tools that prevent infections, hospitalizations, and deaths. However, we should not take them for granted.
TeleSUR English continues to grow. Its signal now reaches Europe. You can order from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on screen are in place since July 1st. Quite soon, further changes will be implemented for the signals in the Middle East and Africa. Now more than ever, the world connects to us and our stories are heard in other faraway nations. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. We have come to the end of this news program, and you can find these and many other stories on our website at